Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the ASX and Sectors weekly chart analysis for the week ending 19th of September 2025. The first chart is the parent index. This is the S&P ASX 200 index, the XJO. You can see that it closed a little lower this week. Trading continues to remain within the range of this down bar. Here's the range. This is the second week now, prices traded within that bar's range. And this is the important level to the upside here. A push above that level would be significant, as would a clear break and close below the lows of the range be significant, although there is some levels of potential support below, there's no doubt. Many of the markets across the Australian Stock Exchange traded inside the range of their 3-week bar here this week, as you'll see as we go along. And you'll also see that many markets had very high volume this week, and that was partly due to it being options and futures expiry day on Thursday. We had elevated volumes on Thursday and Friday. We'll just move on and look at some of the other charts and come back to this chart in the end. This is the mid-cap sector. The mid-cap sector is comprised of the bottom 50 stocks in the ASX 100 index. It also traded inside the 3-week range this week. Here's the 3-week range. Similarly, this is the important level to the upside. This week's bar was an up bar, responding to the narrow spread down bar we saw last week. That was a good positive response. There was a little testing for supply below the previous bar's close prior to the push higher this week. But that's a good solid outcome for this market, and prices trading up closer to the highs of the range than the lows of the range. This is the small ordinary sector, and it's comprised of the bottom 200 stocks in the ASX 300 index. I'll put some lines in here so you can see where we are and where we've been. The price is absorbing its way higher at the moment, with a series of bars that show some testing for supply below the previous bar's close before a push higher in response each time. We've had 4 up bars in a row now, and these 2 bars here, apart from this one, which is a test for supply, is all showing the same thing. This market's grinding higher. Each time it tests for supply, it finds buying support comes in, and that pushes the market a little higher by the end of the week. Volume was quite elevated in this market as well, and that was due to options and futures expiry later in the week. This is the ASX financial sector. It is easily the largest sector in the Australian Stock Exchange by a long way. So what happens in this sector generally plays a very large part in how the XJO, the parent index, appears. You can see price attempted to break out back here 5 weeks ago. The market's been coming back and trading within that bar's range for some time now. 2 weeks ago, the market traded inside the 3-week range, and this week the market's traded with a reduced spread inside both bars' range. This market is coiling itself up for a move. At this point, you can not easily tell which direction it's going to move in, but with the market being quite positive more recently, and all these bars showing little intent to move lower, I would expect this market will attempt to move higher, but that remains to be seen at this point in time. Volume wasn't overly high in this market, but it was above average, and with a narrow spread down bar, that would suggest that buying support was in the market. The ASX metals and mining sector, and this market's been trading quite positively since breaking out above this level. where you saw price attempt to push out, but there was a complex series of resistance lines that the market had to work its way through here. It pushed up, it came back, it pushed up a second time, right up to the highs of the range, tested for supply. It broke out on this bar, and since then it's been trading in consolidation mode. If it breaks above this level, it's into new clear air, and that would probably be a significant positive move for the market. Price this week did trade inside the previous bar's range for most of the week. Spread narrowed somewhat, and the volume was affected by options and futures expiry, so it's hard to tell exactly how that volume would have been. But you'll see by the response next week to a large extent. The ASX gold sector, and we saw the market threatening to move lower back down here, and it looked like the market was going to come down to this level after this bar, but the market turned itself around here, took all of this trading out in one go, and after a brief period of consolidation, it accelerated higher over 3 weeks, and this week it's moved lower in consolidation mode within the range of the previous bar, testing the market for supply, and the narrow spread at least suggests that supply was relatively low. If supply or activity, selling pressure, was really high, that market would likely have a much wider spread to the downside. But the fact that the spread was reduced and the market closed off this week's low suggests that there is buying support in the market, and that buying support is defending against supply, and the market is likely, once this period is over, to attempt to move higher in response. This is the ASX energy sector, and this market just rolled over a little bit more recently. Here's where the market pulled back last week, and I was expecting the market to find support at that level. It's broken below that level this week. If there's downside follow through next week, that's the level there that you would expect the market to attempt to find some support in here. A complete reversal and back into this range would be quite a positive for the market. That would suggest the market was too strong to come back to this level. So the expectation now is for this market to come back to this 8,000 level or thereabouts and test it for strength. There's a range in there, through there, where there should be increased buying support emerge. And the expectation is for the market to come back and test that level for strength now. So watch to see if the market does see downside follow through or whether it attempts to reverse next week, because it will be important and it'll give you some insight into the underlying sentiment across this market. This is the healthcare sector, and after that widespread down bar, which we saw 5 weeks ago, the market has been attempting to find support, but supply continues to be drawn out. There was some buying support emerge adjacent to these lows. The market did dip below that level and then closed off its low and back at that important level. A clear break and close below this level would be significant and quite a negative to the market. So this is an important level at 3,800 on this index. We saw an attempt for this market to consolidate down here, and that attempt to consolidate appears to have failed. At this point, it's threatening to break down. It has found some support at the level below, and similar to that energy chart, once the market broke below this low, the expectation would be to test this level for strength, and that's exactly what's happening right now. A failure here and a clear break and close below that level would be a negative for this market, a significant negative I expect, and a recovery here would see the market continuing to attempt to consolidate and perhaps accumulate at this level. So we're at a really important juncture here. Watch what happens. It's going to be important. The ASX industrial sector did break out above the important level 5 weeks ago. Here was the important level where we saw supply drawn out on that bar, pull back in response and then consolidation. We saw some testing for supply and absorption through here before an attempt to break out on this bar. And since then, the market's been trading in consolidation mode within the range of that bar. A clear break and close below that range would suggest the attempt to break out will have failed. But at this point, the market continues to trade above the important level or right at it and within the range of the breakout bar or the attempt to break out bar. So the consolidation's on, and we'll just see if it's going to be successful or not. At this point, there's been 4 down bars in a row, but you can see on 4 down bars, the market's reluctant to move lower. If it really wanted to break down in 4 down bars, that's 4 weeks of trading, a month's trading, it really should have been able to break below the lows of the trading range and at least test the important level for strength. But there's been 4 weeks of trading and the market is showing you a reluctance to move lower. It's moving lower. There's supply being drawn out. The market's attempting to absorb that supply. It's showing a reluctance to move lower. So we'll just see if the supply continues, it's persistent and ongoing, it will break down and the market will continue to push lower. But what we need to watch for is an increased spread and volume towards the downside. That would suggest that supply is going to be overwhelming. While the spreads remain narrow or below the average, the market is showing you there's an attempt to absorb the supply that's being drawn out. And that's a positive response to the market. So another one to keep watching. This is the ASX consumer staples. Effectively, it's supermarkets, in Australia at least. Here was the highs of the range. Up here, we saw the market come back, establish a low through here, and the market's come back now and it's trading right at that low. This is the important level, around 12,000 on this chart. A clear break and close below this level would be significant. The next level lower comes through there. And if that's broken, you're likely to see market stretching right down towards this level. There is a range in here where the market could attempt to find support. A break below that level would see this level come into play. So we're at an important juncture on this chart as well. A clear break and close below that level there would likely see the market in this range through here where you would expect the market to attempt to find some support in there. A reversal at this level would also be significant and suggest the market has found sufficient buying support adjacent to these previous lows to defend against supply and attempt to go sideways, at least through here. So another one worth watching. They're mounting up, aren't they? This is another market that's trading inside the range. This is the 5-week range here, and the market's found some support down here. It's pushed up. There was a period where quite a bit of absorption was taking place through here. The market finally accelerated higher, tested for supply, pushed higher again, and since then the market's been trading in consolidation mode, attempting to absorb any supply that's been drawn out by the recent gains. And the spreads and the trading suggest that this market is stronger than weaker. The longer tails here, the narrow spread towards the downside test for supply below the previous bar's close, and then a push higher, all suggest that this market is seeing relative strength in the market. There's buying support there and it's defending against supply. A clear break and close below the highs of the range would be significant, as would a breakdown, but that seems less likely at this point. The ASX property sector also saw buying support emerge down here. There was a push higher, a large period of consolidation through here. Some supply was drawn out up here, and that was tested on this little shakeout bar. There was a test for supply in response, a push higher, and this week is a inside bar for the most part, and it's effectively an elongated test for supply, a bit of an ugly looking test for supply, but that's what the intent behind it was. And the close well off this week's low suggests there is buying support in this market, and all things being equal, there may be an attempt to move higher when trading conditions are favourable. If the market was to fail, this is the first level you would expect some buying support to emerge at least adjacent to this trading to the left. But this market does look like it's been consolidating in response to this weakness which emerged, and the trading suggests the market is well placed to attempt to push higher in response when trading conditions are favourable. Just back to the parent index quickly. Now you've seen all the other charts. You can see where the market found support here after it pushed lower. Test for supply there. Market moved up. There was a period of consolidation in response before a secondary push higher. 2 tests for supply, that's 2 weeks trading. Prices come back to that level this week. The market sort of stalled through here. It was attempting to grind higher. So weakness did emerge on this bar. And now the market's been trading inside this bar's range. This is the important level to watch now. A clear break and close above that level would be significant, as would a clear break and close below this bar's low. So we need to watch carefully to see whether the market does attempt to break down next week, and if it does, whether buying support emerges and the prices close back at this level, or if the market attempts to reverse, push back up and close up near the highs of the range. That would be much stronger. The fact that the market continues to trade within this bar's range suggests an element of strength, but it is flirting with its lows this week. And it's not really threatening to break down, but it's putting a bad gut feel across the market, which is not uncommon in the market, and you'll often see markets reverse in response to that type of trading. Okay, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again next week. Thank you. See ya.